Chapter 241, The Spectral Swordsman. The Land of Waterfall. The Land of Waterfall was a country filled with mountains, rivers, and waterfalls. Due to the same reason, it also had various valleys which added to the beautiful scenery of the country. In one such unnamed valley was a secret base. 12 ninjas were busy staring at a map and making plans. All 12 ninjas had hidden their faces using demon-faced masks. After some time, a ninja pointed at a spot on the map and said, "Captain, according to our information, Lord Itouya and his entourage have already crossed the border. They will cross this bridge in around 2 hours." The captain nodded. He didn't make any decision. A ninja standing next to him said in a soft voice, "Yes, but he is guarded by Naruto. Even with us 12 acting together, defeating him will be difficult. He is an expert at water release. He could defend the noble Yuya and counter-attack at the same time." The captain nodded grimly and said, "Yuto was away on a secret mission for a long time. I didn't expect him to return along with Yuya. It complicates our situation." Suddenly, a snort was heard. The 12 ninjas looked towards the source of the sound. 2 more masked ninjas were sitting in the cave as well. One was wearing an elephant mask while the other was wearing a red ape mask. The ape masked ninja scolded, "What are you afraid of with us here? Do your attack as planned. We will sneak attack Naruto and kill him. Even if he is an expert in water release, it is weak against our earth release. The mission will go as planned." The captain looked at him and nodded, "With your assurance, I can rest assured." He looked at his subordinates and said with determination in his voice, "Our Kawaguchi family has been suppressed by the Ito family for far too long. Today, with the aid of our friend from Iwagakure, we will eliminate their successor and their strongest guardian. With this first step, our family will rise up steadily and take control of the northwestern area of our country." His words sent a wave of excitement through his subordinates. They all shouted in excitement, "Yes, Captain." The Umbu from IWA saw their excitement and sniggered secretly. They thought, "What fools. Getting excited about ruling just one small part of this small rural country." However, they didn't say anything. Their orders were to slowly expand Iwagakure's influence into Kigakure. If they succeed, then in the next war, Iwagakure could attack the Land of Fire through 3 countries without having to face much resistance. It would force Konoha's forces to spread too thin. After all, Konoha's location meant that it would have to defend against all 4 major villages. The captain began laying out the plans. He set a few pieces on the map and said, "We will set up our ambush just away from this bridge. This place doesn't have any water bodies close by, so Yuto's water manipulation will be restricted. After we kill them, we will burn their bodies and dump them close to the Land of Fire. We will plant some pieces of evidence that they were attacked by Konoha who retreated after killing them. This way, no suspicion will be cast upon us and Lord Daimyo will restrict the country's dealings with the Land of Fire." Everyone nodded. The Umbu ninjas from Iwagakure were also satisfied with the plan. The captain looked at their satisfaction and sighed in relief. Though their family had ambitions, they definitely didn't have the power to lord over one region. It was only due to the support from Iwagakure that they had the guts to make such a plan. So he had to ensure that the IWA Umbu were satisfied. With the preparations made, they set off immediately. They moved out of the valley and moved rapidly and stealthily on top of the trees. Within 5 minutes, they reached close to the spot where they were planning to set an ambush. Suddenly, one of the Iwagakure Umbu shouted, "Look out!" His shout alerted everyone. However, even before they could raise their guard, they saw air bullets ripping through the trees to their right and coming straight at them. Their eyes widened. The bullets were too close to move away. One ninja was too close to the air bullets. Even before he could see them, an air bullet pierced through his head and he dropped dead. The others watched the air bullets and reacted however they could. Some bent forward for the bullets to pass from above while some gathered chakra in their feet and stamped their legs on the ground to stop themselves and saw the bullets pass in front of their eyes. However, some air bullets still pierced through the limbs of a couple of ninjas. The Iwagakure ninjas frowned. Their plan was perfect. They didn't expect to be ambushed. Immediately, all the remaining 11 Takigakure ninjas and 2 Iwagakure Umbu looked angrily at the spot from where air bullets were fired at them. However, they couldn't sense anyone. Suddenly, the bare-masked Iwa Umbu slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, Earth Dome Jutsu. An earth dome appeared from the ground and began surrounding all of them. The Takigakure ninjas watched with eyes widened as they saw a strong windstorm coming at them from the opposite direction. Luckily, the earth dome was formed in time. The strong wind currents hit the dome and caused tremors to pass through the dome. Dust began falling inside the dome due to those tremors. However, the dome didn't collapse. Sweat formed behind the masks of Takigakure ninjas. The captain gulped and said, "Luckily you noticed the attack." However, the Iwagakure Umbu ninjas were still frowning. The ape-masked Umbu said, "Be careful. I can't sense the attacker. He could be very strong." Suddenly, his body moved out of the way instinctively. A hole appeared in the dome and a very strong bullet made of wind pierced into the dome. The bullet hit the side of his jacket and left a cut along the sides of his abdomen. At the same time, 9 more vacuum bullets pierced into the earth dome. Unlike the war-hardened Iwagakure Umbu, the ninjas from Takigakure didn't have the same survival instincts. 5 vacuum bullets pierced through the vital organs of the Takigakure ninjas. The remaining bullets could only leave some cuts on the bodies of the remaining ninjas. The Takigakure ninjas were horrified and left tongue-tied. The captain's heart ached as he saw the dead ninjas and thought, "We worked so hard to raise them to Chunin level. The family spent countless resources on them. But in less than a minute, more than half of them are dead." Fear could be seen on his face. The Iwagakure Umbu noticed their emotions and frowned. At the same time, they were on guard due to how brutal and efficient their opponent was. The elephant-masked Iwa Umbu once again slammed his hands on the ground while thinking, "We can't stay hidden here if the dome can't protect us. We will just be sitting ducks." Small spikes began appearing on the surface of the earth dome. The spikes were launched in all directions as the earth dome collapsed. The spikes buried themselves in the trees but didn't hit their attacker. They watched with frowns on their face as they still couldn't find who attacked them. The ape-masked Umbu instructed, "Keep an eye in all directions. I will find that bastard." He waved hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, Earth sensing jutsu. A vibration was sent through the ground. Every animal who was in a 1.5 kilometer radius felt the vibration passing under their feet. They quickly began running away from the point of impact. Despite the large scale of vibration, the Umbu still didn't sense anyone. A frown formed on his face. He snorted and put more chakra into the ground. The vibrations intensified. The Takigakure ninjas could feel the ground shaking under their feet. The vibrations were so strong that they even traveled up the tree trunks. On one such tree, the vibrations were felt under the feet of a masked ninja hiding there. A smile formed behind the mask of the ape-masked Umbu as he muttered, "Got him." At the next moment, giant spears formed under the tree and launched at the ninja hiding on it. However, the ninja immediately flickered away. But since the Iwa ninjas had already sensed him, they didn't allow him to disappear from their sight once again. They, along with the Takigakura ninjas, gave chase. The attacker noticed it and sighed, "Looks like I can't sneak attack anymore." He looked towards the ninjas chasing him and launched a couple of dozen air bullets. The IWA and Taki ninjas saw the attack and dodged it with ease. Due to the distance between them and since they knew the attack was coming, it was much easier to dodge. However, using that short moment of distraction, the ninja disappeared once again. The ape-masked ninja frowned and quickly began feeling the vibrations under his feet. Suddenly, he turned around and shouted, "Behind us!" All the ninjas quickly turned around. To their surprise, the attacker was very close. The Taki ninja who was the farthest in the back watched the attacker swing his sword at him. The scenes of his comrades falling dead ran through his brain. In a rage, he grabbed his kunao and swung it at the attacker's sword and yelled, "Die!" At the same time, the others grabbed their kunao to attack him. They planned to kill him when he was blocked. However, they watched with widened eyes as the sword cut through the kunao as if it was air. The sword beheaded the seventh Taki ninja. The eyes of the remaining 5 Taki ninjas went red in rage. They tried to attack, but the attacker flickered on a branch behind him. The IWA Umbu finally got a good look at the ninja. The attacker was a well-built young ninja who was wearing a hawk mask. In addition, he had 2 swords hanging on the right side of his waist. And the sword sheaths on both those swords were very exquisite. Swirling designs were etched into its glossy black lacquer. They immediately recognized him and their expressions became grim behind their masks. The Taki ninjas were enraged. They were about to attack when the elephant-masked Umbu said in a grim voice, "It is the spectral swordsman." The Taki ninjas suddenly stopped. Their expressions became grim. Horror could be seen in their eyes. They watched their attacker as if he was the Grim Reaper himself. Chapter 242, Time Skip. The 5 Taki ninjas stared at the spectral swordsman in front of them and gulped. His information began running through their mind. It was around 6 months ago when murmurs of a swordsman were being heard. It was said that he appeared and disappeared at will. It was said that his victims wouldn't even know when they were dead until they saw their headless bodies with their detached heads. According to the rumors, there were 2 features that were identified with the spectral swordsman. They were the hawk mask he wore and 2 exquisite swords hanging on the right side of his waist. The swordsman was soon called the spectral swordsman. Among the minor villages, he was a menace. There were no records of anyone stopping him. Even against the major villages, his record was very good. He would eliminate his target and escape long before any reinforcements could arrive. He was so efficient, that it took over 6 months for someone to actually see him in action. As soon as he was seen, rumors of his appearance spread quickly throughout the ninja world. The ape-masked Umbu shouted, "Don't be shocked by his reputation. He is just one guy. Stay and fight together. Keep an eye out for his sneak attacks." His words snapped everyone from their shock. They prepared themselves for an intense fight. Chakra flowed through the sword of the spectral swordsman as he swung it towards the 7 ninjas. A windstorm consisting of hundreds of sword slashes immediately engulfed the group. The 2 IWA Umbu ninjas immediately slammed their hands on the ground. Earth release, multiple earth walls jutsu. Immediately, dozens of walls of varying sizes appeared from the ground. They surrounded them from multiple sides. Having experienced the vacuum bullets, they didn't want to lock themselves in without any room for escaping. The windstorm hit the walls and left multiple slashes in the walls. But once again, the walls stood. Behind the wall, the ape-masked Umbu shouted, "Keep an eye out for those wind bullets." and counterattack once these winds die down. Even without his warning, everyone was as alert as they could be. The spectral swordsman noticed their defense. He opened his mouth and exhaled a horizontal wind wave. However, the core of this wind wave was made of vacuum. The vacuum wave hit the walls and cut through them with ease. The enemy ninjas saw the wave and immediately jumped high up to dodge the wave. The wave safely passed from under them and cut off a bunch of trees before leaving a deep scar on the ground. However, their troubles weren't over. As soon as they jumped to dodge the attack, the swordsman flickered next to them. They watched in horror as he swung his sword once again. The one closest to him had no chance of dodging. His neck was sent flying in the air. Worse, the sword also sent a flying slash towards the rest of them. 3 more Taki ninjas couldn't dodge or use any defensive jutsus and died to the slash. Only the Taki captain and the 2 IWA Umbu were able to move out of the way. The IWA ninjas quickly got back on the ground while weaving hand signs. Elephant-masked Umbu slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release, mud river jutsu. The ground in front of him turned into mud and flowed towards the swordsman at a high speed. At the same time, the ape-masked Umbu completed his jutsu. Fire release, fire dragon jutsu. He spat a fire dragon into the mud river. Both jutsus combined seamlessly and moved towards the swordsman ferociously. However, the swordsman just flickered out of the way and once again moved to their rear and attacked with his sword. The Taki captain saw his actions. He thought, I can't let him swing his sword anymore. Or even I might die here. He weaved signs and spat a water jet at the swordsman to force him back. However, instead of dodging, the swordsman exhaled a vacuum cannon into the water jet. The jutsu overwhelmed the water jet and ripped straight through it at a rapid speed. The Taki captain didn't expect such a response and was caught off guard. He barely managed to move to his right. Unfortunately, the jutsu was too fast and much larger than the earlier bullets. The cannon hit the left side of his chest and tore it from his body entirely. Even his heart was destroyed. He fell to the ground with his eyes wide open and full of terror and shock. The sight sent a shiver down the spines of the IWA Umbu. However, they didn't let it affect them and attacked the swordsman immediately. This time, his position was pelted by hundreds of sharp spikes. However, he still flickered away. The ape-masked Umbu cursed, "Slippery bastard." However, suddenly their eyes widened. Both looked to their left. A blue arrow of lightning was piercing through everything in its path and approaching them at an insane speed. They immediately tried to jump out of the way but tripped and fell down. In a panic, they looked at their feet. They were shocked to see that their feet were stuck in the ground. Shock appeared on their faces as they couldn't believe that they were trapped using the element they were most proficient in. The lightning arrow reached them and exploded. Both their bodies were zapped mercilessly. A miserable scream exited their mouth. After a few seconds, the lightning dispersed. The scent of their burnt flesh could be smelled. However, they were still alive and barely stood on their feet. The lightning had got rid of the trap under their feet. Unfortunately, the swordsman appeared behind them and beheaded them both with a single swing of his sword. All 14 ninjas were killed. The swordsman looked at the dead ninjas and thought, "It doesn't matter how many times it happens, your intelligence still shocks me, Shikaku." He looked up to see a turtle-masked Umbu appearing from the ground. He was the one who trapped their feet. Turtle sighed and said, "Your speed keeps amazing me, Hawk. It's as if you get faster every day." The victory was overwhelming. And the major reason for such an overwhelming victory was his speed. He dodged every attack and always had the initiative whenever he decided to attack. At times, his enemies didn't even have the time to form a jutsu. Hawk replied, they were at most chinins. Only these two were better. Still, they weren't strong enough. Turtle muttered to himself, do you have to keep saying that every time? Besides, you are also a chinin. Soon after, a bear-masked and a fox-masked umbu appeared from the direction from where the lightning arrow was shot. Kuma observed the surroundings and said, great work as usual, Hawk. Hawk nodded and asked, I didn't sense anyone else other than these guys. So is this mission over? Kuma nodded, we checked the perimeter and didn't find anyone else. There shouldn't be any more danger for you yet. And if something does happen, he still has Yuto protecting him. In any case, this was the only attack that the commander predicted. It isn't our job to keep protecting them until they reach their home. Hawk nodded. Of course, the commander who Kuma referred to was Konoha's Jounin commander and not the Umbu commander. Shikaku had predicted that a move would be made against Itoyuya, who had good relations with Konoha. Hence, Kuma's Umbu unit was sent to eliminate the attackers and push the blame on Iwagakure. Kuma approached the dead bodies and instructed, Turtle, crush them with earth release. Make it look like they were killed by Iwagakure ninjas instead of a sword. Turtle nodded and got to work. In a few minutes, he changed how the wounds on everyone's bodies looked. He stabbed earth spears into the wounds made by the air and vacuum bullets. As for the ones that were beheaded, he crushed their bodies at the spot of the cut so that they wouldn't look like a clean cut. If anyone would see their bodies, it would be very unlikely that they could be traced back to the spectral swordsman. Hawk inspected the bodies and nodded in satisfaction. The truth is that he had done many more killings than he was given credit for. However, most of them were hidden due to Turtle's methods. So he was looked at as more of a fable rather than a bloodthirsty killer. After planting some fake evidence, Turtle buried all the bodies in the ground and they left without speaking another word and began returning to Konoha. They returned back to their quarters in the Umbu. After removing their masks, Tsuyoshi said, great work as usual. The mission was completed without a hitch. He looked at Fujin and said with a smile, Fujin, over the last 20 months, your performance has been brilliant. Lord Hokage has acknowledged your performance and asked you to meet him tomorrow. His praise for Fujin wasn't unjustified. Fujin had fit into the Umbu unit like a glove and seamlessly blended into the Umbu lifestyle. He was efficient, deadly, and didn't seek fame or glory. Despite having a famous title, very few in Konoha knew that it was him. Kane and Teru's eyes widened as they realized what Tsuyoshi meant. Fujin nodded and said with a smile, all right. Teru immediately patted Fujin's shoulder and said in excitement, congrats, Fujin. Chapter 243, Settling Debt with Interest. Kane also realized why Fujin was called by the Hokage. He smiled and said, looks like you won the race for promotion to Umbu captain. He sighed and continued, makes sense though considering how many people you have killed. Your spectral swordsman title is very well known and feared. Tsuyoshi shook his head and said, the Umbu captain title isn't handed so easily. You will be given a promotion mission. The mission is usually very difficult. Only if you perform it satisfactorily will you be promoted. Anyways, no point in speculating about it. Take some rest today and ensure that you are at your complete readiness tomorrow. Fujin nodded and said, all right Captain. Thank you for all your guidance. The squad dispersed. Unlike the time with his Genin squad, the Umbu squad never hung together other than when they were training or doing missions. Tsuyoshi had instructed them to not appear together in public while they were a part of the Umbu. Due to this, the trio of Fujin, Teru, and Keen never went out together to eat or party despite being in the same team for over a year and a half. Fujin grabbed a random mask, put it on and walked out of the room while thinking, a secret mission, huh? I wonder what it will be. He thought for a bit and speculated, it will most probably be another political scheme by Shikaku. That guy makes way too many schemes. No wonder Konoha's position is so solid despite being vulnerable militarily for so long. Anyways, it is still early morning. What should I do for the day? Just resting the entire day will be a waste. As he was thinking, he walked towards the training facilities of the Umbu. A grin formed on his face behind the mask. With his next step, his physical features transformed. His height increased to 6 feet 6 inches and his body became very slim. On his next step, his chakra signature transformed. It became heavy in yin chakra. If a sensor were to sense him, it would be very difficult to link him to Fujin. He kept walking nonchalantly to the training facilities. After arriving at the facility, he saw a few other Umbu. Without exchanging words with anyone or attracting any attention, he walked towards the wind training rooms and entered one. His eyes immediately roamed through the room. All the seals in the room that were inscribed and hidden in the room became visible to him. Many of these seals were for inspection and spying. He acted as if he didn't notice any of them and sat in the center of the room and began meditating. Just like in the tower in the Forest of Death, these rooms also had elemental crystals. Fujin began absorbing the energy from the crystal. The room didn't initially have any methods of investigation and spying. But, shortly after Fujin entered the Umbu, he began using these rooms. And his rate of absorbing the energy from wind crystals skyrocketed. He initially needed to meditate for 4 hours for 12 days to completely absorb all the energy in one wind crystal. But in a few months, he got used to absorbing energy from the wind crystal. He began exhausting an entire crystal in one meditation session of 4 hours. This development alarmed Hiruzen. Wind crystals used to be the ones that used to be the slowest to be exhausted. But suddenly, its rate of absorption became second to only fire crystals. He immediately tried to investigate but didn't find anything. So he resorted to inscribing seals in the wind training rooms. Unfortunately, Fujin was a seal master as well. He easily identified the seals and played around with them. Hiruzen couldn't figure out how the crystal was getting absorbed so quickly. Numerous times, he also sent some Umbu to spy on the meditation rooms. But in that case, Fujin would absorb very little energy from the wind crystal. Due to this, no one could blame him. Instead, the Umbu ninjas that were keeping an eye became his perfect alibi. Of course, Hiruzen did suspect him. After all, the number of wind users was very low in Konoha. After failing to find any suspect, he thought very hard. The absorption rate of wind crystals increased suddenly after the new Umbu were inducted. Of those 234, only 5 specialize in wind release. But, I can't disregard others or the older Umbu as it is possible that they are developing wind as their second or third element. Finally, Hiruzen gave up. Leave it. Even if I find the culprit, I can't punish them or tell them to stop. Otherwise, everyone else will begin questioning the speech I gave to motivate them. Besides, even though the usage is high, we do have a good stock of wind crystals. It is still within an acceptable range. Since he joined the Umbu, Fujin alone used up around 250 wind crystals. He had successfully used up all the money Hiruzen earned by gambling on him and was still collecting interest. The overall consumption of wind crystals during this period was over 400. It barely exceeded earth and water crystals, which were in the range of 350 to 400. Of course, fire crystals were still the ones being used the most. The Umbu training facility used over 1,500 fire crystals every year. Due to the sudden increase in Umbu numbers, Hiruzen ran out of fire crystals a few times. If not for the fact that the Uchiha clan no longer existed and he could divert the fire crystals that used to be allotted to them, he would have been forced to apply restrictions on the fire training rooms. Other than the wind crystals, Fujin also absorbed energy from lightning, fire, and earth crystals. However, his rate of absorption with them was very low. His rate of absorbing wind energy kept increasing rapidly until he hit a limit. But his other elements didn't experience such an increase in the rate of absorption and he reached their limits much sooner. Fujin had expected such a result from fire and earth crystals, but he was disappointed when he couldn't increase the speed of absorption from lightning crystals. Of course, despite the slower rate of absorption, it was still very helpful in improving his affinity with those elements. In around 3.5 hours, Fujin emptied the wind crystal. He got up and went into a lightning training room. These rooms didn't have the same level of investigative seals. The seals in the wind training room didn't detect that the crystal was empty until another Umbu visited to train his wind element and realized that it was empty. Fujin spent most of his day in the training facility and only returned home late at night. He had dinner and went to sleep. The next day, he once again began his morning with an intense morning workout. Unless he was out on a mission, Fujin never missed his morning workout for even a single day. Instead, his morning workout had gotten even more intense. He had managed to use his previous training seal at its 100% capacity. He created a new seal for himself that had a maximum limit 4 times higher than the seal Hiruzen had created for him. Fujin returned home after the workout and freshened up for the meeting with Hiruzen. While getting prepared, he took a look at his bracers and thought, I have been using these bracers since I became a genin. Time to change it? He took off his bracers. A grin formed on his face as he thought, the spectral swordsman identity has become too well known. All the Umbu ninjas from the 4 major villages identify main on sight. Even though they don't know about most of my capabilities, it is annoying when they get on full alert and don't provide any openings. It's time to play that card. He discarded his old bracers and put on new ones. Unlike his previous ones, these were very thin and of the same color as his skin. So from a distance, it was very difficult to spot them. In addition, he had inscribed dozens of small storage seals on each bracer and stored a variety of weapons in it. His chakra metal swords were also stored in the bracers. Of course, despite being very thin, they were much harder than his previous bracers as they used better metals, and Fujin himself worked with the blacksmith to inscribe seals into them to make them as tough as he could. With all preparations made, he placed the seal on his door and flickered towards the Hokage building. Chapter 244, The Bait. Fujin knocked and entered the Hokage's office. He noticed that Shikaku was also in the room. However, apart from them, no one else was in the room. Even the 4 Umbu ninjas that usually guarded Hiruzen weren't there. Hiruzen smiled and asked, Fujin, how have you been? He noticed the new bracers Fujin was wearing and immediately noticed the high number of seals inscribed in them. He looked into Fujin's eyes and meaningfully said, good bracers. Fujin ignored the gaze and the implications behind his words. He replied with a smile, thank you, Grandpa. I have been well. Hiruzen had gotten used to Fujin ignoring subtle messages. He said, your performance in the Umbu has been very good. Both Tsuyoshi and the Umbu commander have recommended me for promoting you to the Umbu captain rank. However, the Umbu captain rank is equivalent to the Jounin rank. So to become one, you have to complete a promotion mission. Fujin nodded and said, yes, Captain informed me. Hiruzen looked at Shikaku. Shikaku stepped forward and handed a scroll to Fujin and said, "Recently, we have been getting multiple strange reports from the Land of Wind. We suspect that Tsunagakuwa wants to end the alliance with us while the daimyo of the Land of Wind doesn't. Your mission will be to infiltrate into the Land of Wind and cause discontent for Tsunagakuwa among their nobles and make them more inclined to assign missions to Konoha. The scroll has multiple scrolls with details of all the nobles in the Land of Wind, their nature, likes, dislikes, the people precious to them and their current relations with us and Suna, along with some recommendations for you. You will act on your own and are free to do whatever you want to make progress in the mission. Just don't let anyone know that you are from Konoha." Fujin furrowed his eyebrows. The mission was huge. Though he had grown stronger, his strength wasn't at a level where he could casually influence the relations between a daimyo and a kage. Hiruzen and Shikaku noticed his expressions but didn't say anything. Fujin said, "The mission is too difficult. Though I could make some moves, I am sure that Suna will retaliate immediately. So my actions won't make much of a difference." Shikaku nodded and said, "Yes, but you don't need to worry. You aren't the only one we have sent. Many other Umbu ninjas have been given the same promotion mission. So the attention from Tsunagakuwa will be divided among all of you. Of course, if you think that you can't continue the mission anymore, you are allowed to retreat. In addition, be careful of who you kill, as the Umbu ninjas we deployed will be under disguises." A frown formed on Fujin's face. The mission was not only difficult but it also had several complexities. He sighed and thought, despite the training, most of my missions in the Umbu were straightforward assassination, elimination, or protection missions. I guessed that Hiruzen wanted me to focus on those skills. Looks like my guess was wrong. This mission will be a pain in the ass." Fujin asked, "How long do I have to stay there?" Shikaku replied, "As long as you can. Retreat when you think that your cover might be blown or you don't think you can make any further progress towards the mission. The success or failure of the mission will be decided by how long you manage to stay in the Land of Wind and the result of your actions there." Fujin digested the information. Shikaku asked, "Any more questions?" Fujin shook his head and said, "No. But I would like to have the attire of a Sand Umbu ninja along with a new mask that is popular among their ranks." Shikaku had expected such a request from Fujin. He handed Fujin another scroll and said, "This scroll has what you asked for. It also has enough ration bars and water to last half a year." Fujin accepted the scroll. At the same time, he got an idea of how long he was expected to stay undercover in the Land of Wind. Shikaku asked, "Are you ready to move out or do you need some time to prepare?" Fujin replied, "I can move out right away." Shikaku nodded and said, "Good. We have one more mission for you. This one isn't related to your promotion mission, but a good performance could influence our decision if your performance in the Land of Wind is subpar." Fujin looked at Shikaku without changing his expression and thought, "Do you still not know that such manipulation tactics don't work on me?" Shikaku obviously knew it. He had interacted several times with Fujin. But he was just too lazy to change his ways for just one person. From his point of view, regardless of how he spoke, Fujin would act the same way. So he didn't bother changing his dialogue. Shikaku said, "In recent times, we have noticed the movement of some bounty hunter rogue ninjas in the forests around our village. I speculate that they have an accomplice in the village who monitors the movements of ninjas and informs his group outside the village. We tried trapping them but haven't had any success so far as they are very careful with their targets." Hiruzen added, "You haven't been seen much since a bounty was put on your head, as your Umbu achievements haven't been credited to you yet. So you will be the perfect bait for them. Go through the village gate without any disguise and let them see you. Hopefully, they will think of you as the perfect target and ambush you outside the village. We will send a Jounin squad to follow you stealthily from a distance. They will reinforce you as soon as the battle begins or you send a signal. Fujin thought for a few seconds and said, "All right. Do we have any intel on who the rogue bounty hunters are?" Hiruzen shook his head. "We have eliminated one group who had rogue ninjas from IWA, but they didn't have any intel on others. According to our calculations, there are 3 more groups." Fujin said, "Okay. I will move out now." He left the office and began walking casually towards the village gate while thinking, bounty hunters. I haven't encountered any in this world other than Kakuzu. Anyways, as long as he or any other S-rank ninjas aren't involved, I should be fine. If they are weak, I can eliminate them myself. Otherwise, I will just have to stall them. Fujin reached the gate and felt a few eyes on himself. He analyzed, though there are a bunch of eyes on me, it will be difficult to say who is with the bounty hunters. After all, there are always a bunch of eyes on the village gate. Oh well, let's see. As soon as Fujin left the village, 2 pairs of eyes sparkled in greed. One of these pairs belonged to a man in his 20s with an ordinary appearance and was operating a firework shop near the village gate. He observed the direction in which Fujin left and couldn't help but lick his lips. He thought, when we made a list of the good targets, this boy topped it. Who knows which gods he offended to get such a big bounty. Unfortunately, this coward didn't leave the village for so long. But finally, it's time. The man looked at a stall opposite his. The man in that stall also looked back at him. Their eyes met. Both quickly used their methods to inform their respective groups. However, unknown to both of them, one squad of Jounins left the village secretly and followed Fujin from a few kilometers away. If either of the 2 bounty hunter groups knew about the existence of these ninjas, they wouldn't dare to approach Fujin even if their courage was amplified 100 times. After all, this group was led by Konoha's newest elite Jounin, Copy Ninja Kakashi. Fujin didn't sense Kakashi's squad. However, he wasn't surprised as he wouldn't be good bait if they could be sensed so easily. He continued traveling through the woods as if everything was normal, but he didn't move at his max speed to not create any doubts in the minds of the bounty hunters. 2 groups of bounty hunters quickly moved towards the route from Konoha to the Land of Rain. The first group was made of rogue ninjas from Kirigakure. They excelled in assassination. Their group contained 11 ninjas. Before betraying, 8 were Chunins in Kiri while the remaining 3 were Jounins. The second group was made of rogue ninjas from the countries of Lands of Rain, River, Grass, Bird, and Bear. This group had 24 people, 11 of whom were Jounins in their village before they went rogue. Both reached the same spot on the route at the same time and got into a standoff. After all, their messengers had also informed them that another group of bounty hunters might also be hunting Fujin and neither wanted the other group to get to Fujin first. Chapter 245, I don't wanna be a bait anymore. The 2 groups of bounty hunters stared at each other. Suddenly, Kido Shiro, one of the Kiri rogues, sighed in relief and said loudly, "Thankfully we found them. I was worried that these morons might ambush him closer to Konoha and steal our jackpot." His statement irked the bounty hunters in the other group. One of them sneered and said, "Aren't you being too cocky? We outnumber you by more than 2 to 1. Do you think you have a chance to compete against us?" The leader of the Kiri rogues grinned. His name was Higashi Renzo. He was a large muscular guy with hideous scars all over his body. He was being trained to be the next generation of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Unfortunately, before he could complete his training, everything went crazy in that country. Renzo said in a hoarse voice, "You may outnumber us, but do you weaklings think you have any chance against us?" A wave of killing intent washed over the other group of bounty hunters. Their expressions became very grim. Though they haven't ever experienced it, Kiri's cruel methods and the craziness of their ninjas were well known throughout the world. Ogawa Shinjo, the leader of this group, exerted his chakra to snap his comrades out of the killing intent unleashed by his opponent. The Kiri ninjas were about to attack, but he raised his hand and said, "Stop. If we fight here, we will alert the Konoha ninjas and will be hunted until we are all dead. Even if you are strong, against Konoha, you are nothing but bugs. Not only will you not get the bounty, but you will be hunted. So why not team up? We will ambush the kid together and split the reward on his head. We will each get 10 million ryo and won't have to fight each other to death." Shiro immediately said, "Why would we split the rewards with you? As for Konoha ninjas, we will have long killed you all and that brat and left even before those tree huggers sense something is wrong." He was interrupted by a jounin who said, "Shut up. Renzo, let's cooperate. The Konoha ninjas are already hunting for us. A huge battle could invite all sorts of trouble." Renzo wanted to fight. However, he couldn't disregard the concerns of the jounin who just spoke. After all, he was the only seal master in their group and was his second in command. Without his help, bounty hunting would become much more risky. Renzo looked at Shinjo and said, "All right, let's team up." The two groups teamed up and set up an ambush for Fujin. Fujin had a frown on his face. Even after traveling for 6 hours, no one intercepted or attacked him. He thought, did they sense the trap that Shikaku laid for them? Or were their accomplices on a break when I left the village? He continued moving through the vast forests of the Land of Fire while occasionally activating and spreading his chakra field. Finally, after half an hour, he sensed something off. His speed slowed down as he maintained his chakra field and analyzed, "I can't sense 4 locations. These guys have a seal master within their ranks. That's annoying. I can't check how strong they are. But, this might not be entirely bad. Since they are separated, I will hunt them one by one." The 4 locations that Fujin's chakra field couldn't sense were small underground rooms constructed using earth release. If it was a normal sensor, he wouldn't feel anything off. But Fujin himself was a seal master. So it couldn't be hidden from him. The 4 locations were all spread properly. 2 were close to the path that Fujin was taking, while the remaining 2 locations covered the left and the right sides. Fujin locked his eyes on the location to the left. He was about to move when he suddenly stopped. His eyes shrunk as his instincts warned him and he stayed in his location. He thought, "Why am I having such a bad feeling? It is almost comparable to the feeling I had when we fell into Darui's trap." During his time in Umbu, Fujin had developed an incredible sense of danger. His instincts would warn him every time he was about to fall in grave danger. Though he wasn't completely sure, Fujin speculated that it was a result of him gaining more experience and due to him using his sensing abilities hundreds of thousands of times. The seals in those hidden locations were more advanced than what Fujin had speculated. When his chakra field covered those locations, a few seals began emitting green light. The leader in each of the rooms frowned. They knew that Fujin was a sensor but didn't expect him to spread his chakra field deep in the forest. However, they didn't make a move as they knew that a sensor wouldn't be able to sense them. They expected Fujin to continue forward into their trap. However, their frowns deepened when Fujin didn't move forward and the seals kept emitting the green light. Renzo asked, "Did he discover us?" The seal master answered, "That is unlikely. Unless he is a seal master himself or works closely with one. Renzo quickly analyzed the situation and said, "It doesn't matter. He is just one Chunin brat. Let's go out and hunt him." He quickly broke the seal on the underground room and appeared outside. At the same time, the other three hideouts also received the message and soon they broke out as well. Fujin immediately sensed everyone and began sweating. He almost cursed, "What the fuck? 35 fucking bounty hunters? And 7 of them have Jounin levels of chakra." The bounty hunters ran towards Fujin at full speed. Fortunately, Fujin was over a mile away from their location. He quickly ran backwards and made a few shadow clones while thinking, "This is the last time I'm being the bait. The smartest man and the most experienced man my ass. If I didn't know them any better, I'd think that this is a scheme to kill me." 4 chakra fields extended towards Fujin and his clones and began sensing him. Fujin was left speechless once again. He cursed, "Seriously, what the hell? Seal masters, sensors, such huge numbers. Don't tell me a cage is also hiding within their ranks." Fujin didn't know that 2 groups of bounty hunters were hunting him together. He'd have been confident of taking one group on by himself. But with the 2 groups working together, he didn't want to take much risk. Hiruzen and Shikaku also didn't predict that Fujin would lure 2 groups of bounty hunters. Otherwise, they would have sent more ninjas along with him. At the same time, Pakun said, "Kakashi, 35 new scents have suddenly appeared." Kakashi's eyes widened as he exclaimed, 35. Pakun replied, "Yes. Fujin is running back in our direction but enemies are faster than him. They will reach him before us." Kakashi said, "Everyone, we will move at our fastest speed." Guy grinned and said loudly, 35 bounty hunters on your first mission as an elite Jounin. I'd expect nothing less from my eternal rival." Despite talking, he was the only one in the squad who was able to keep up with Kakashi's speed. Kakashi didn't pay attention to Guy's words as he was confused. Didn't Shikaku say that Fujin was incredibly fast on his feet? How are they faster than him? Among the bounty hunters, one of the censors informed, his chakra has split into 4. According to the intel, he knows the shadow clone jutsu. I can't identify who is the real one. Renzo commanded, "Keep track of all 4 of them. If they split, we will also split and chase one each." Fujin's clones didn't split up. The bounty hunters moved incredibly fast and quickly caught up with Fujin. They still maintained the 4 groups. 2 were trying to chase Fujin from the right and left while the remaining 2 were on his rear. The ones in the rear were led by Renzo and Shinjo respectively. Fujin looked back at them and thought, "Alright, they are close enough." Fujin and his clones split into pairs of 2 and dispersed in opposite directions. This forced the 2 groups in his rear to split up and move towards the groups on their respective sides. The situation suddenly changed as now the groups on Fujin's 2 sides became the closest to him while the groups at his rear lagged behind. Fujin kept observing their positions. Soon, all 4 groups of bounty hunters and the 2 pairs of Fujin's clones were in a straight line. Fujin and his clones stopped and turned around. Fire release, Searing Migraine Jutsu. Wind release, Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. One clone released the Searing Migraine Jutsu while the one next to released the Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. The same was replicated by the other pair. The jutsus combined together perfectly and fused into one deadly attack. The bounty hunters who were chasing at their full speed were suddenly stunned to see a massive firestorm head towards them. The attack came without any warning and they had very little time